Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over my picks for the 10 best muscle cars in Grand Theft Auto Online in 2024. For a vehicle to get onto this list, it has to be competent at being a muscle car. It has to be one of the better muscle cars in GTA Online in terms of lap time, top speed, acceleration, just generally, how good of a vehicle it is, plus usefulness in like GTA Online, for example, like in a free mode scenario or PvP scenario. If it's got Imani tech, for example, it's going to place a little bit higher than some of the other cars. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it, starting off with number 10. At number 10, we have the Declassy Sabre Turbo Custom. $15,000 for the base Sabre Turbo on the Benny's website, plus an additional $505,000 will make your Sabre Turbo into the Sabre Turbo Custom, giving it additional customization as well as low rider abilities, meaning that it has the hydraulics that you can go up or down. You can make one side of the car go up, make the other side of the car go up. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff with it. It's pretty cool. The Sabre Turbo is one of my favorite muscle cars in the game, especially given its price point and given the fact that you can of course steal it because it's worth less than $100,000. Even stock, this vehicle has a lot of customization, but when you make it into the Benny's version, you unlock some special liveries as well as some more additional options that you can do with the vehicle, which I think is really cool. The Sabre Turbo has pretty good performance given how cheap it actually is. It accelerates pretty well, decent top speed, and the handling is actually not that bad, especially given the age of this muscle car. Being that it's an older muscle car and then it's also an OG car from GTA Online, it actually does really well for itself. I'm a big fan of the Sabre Turbo Custom. It's definitely a cool car. Definitely look into getting one for yourselves if you're interested. Next up at number 9, we have the Imponte Ruiner ZZ8. Coming in at $1,320,000. This was added in the summer of 2022, I do believe, as drip feed from the Criminal Enterprises DLC. If I'm not mistaken, I could actually be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I remember it coming out around then. Unfortunately, the ZZ8 looks a lot better than it performs, and I gotta say this is one of my favorite looking muscle cars in the entire game. It's based off of a muscle car that came out in the late 90s or early 2000s, and I want to say it's a Firebird, but I'm not 100% sure. It does look really sick though. I think that the big huge intakes on the front of it that go up along the hood look absolutely awesome, and I just generally think it's actually a pretty good design for a vehicle. I think that it looks very similar to the Chery Camaro that was out around the same time, but it's obviously the Pontiac version of it in game, which is Imponte. Now unfortunately, beyond the handling, this thing kind of sucks. It's pretty slow, it has pretty bad acceleration, and it has a pretty bad top speed. But the handling is its saving grace. It's like the one thing that it does well, which is kind of funny because muscle cars are not known for their handling, but this thing is actually good at handling, but it can't go fast in a straight line. So unfortunately, it's not the greatest car ever, but it still does have pretty good performance. Like generally, like it's not too slow, but it's not too fast either. But the handling being great is a huge bonus. So I figured I would include it on the list at number 9. With that being said, let's go ahead and move on to number 8. Next up at number 8, we have the Vapid Dominator GT, coming in at $2,195,000. These muscle cars are getting really expensive. That's like supercar pricing. But anyways, the Dominator GT is a pretty cool vehicle. Now my only complaint with it is, and I know the guys that like these are gonna really not like what I'm about to say, is the fact that it's a convertible. I absolutely hate that it's a convertible, and not only that it's a convertible, but that it's a soft top convertible. I think it looks so horrible with the roof up. I can't really stand driving it with the roof actually up on it. I think it looks absolutely horrible. It's not a very great looking car with some of the customization that you can do, and then given the fact that it's got the convertible, it just ruins any potential that it had. If it was a hardtop, it'd be so much better looking. The customization options are really awesome on this thing though. I will give it to Rockstar. The only thing that I don't like are some of these vents that you can put out on the sides of the car. I think they look really ugly. I don't have them on mine here in the gameplay, but I think they just look horrible. And some of the bumper options are way too aggressive. They're like full-blown race kit options, but on a convertible. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's kind of stupid. But the Dominator GT has pretty good performance. The handling on this thing is actually pretty awesome. It's also quite quick in a straight line. It gets a good launch despite being rear wheel drive only. Has a pretty high top speed as well. Handling, again, is pretty good. Overall, it's a great package. It just should have been a hardtop. I'm really hoping in the next DLC they're going to give us the Dominator GT hardtop. I think that'd be sweet. I will definitely buy one if they release it. Fingers crossed. Next up at number 7, we have the Bravado Gauntlet Classic Custom, another Benny's vehicle. This is coming in at $615,000. for the regular Bravado Gauntlet Classic, and then you're going to need to spend another $815,000 to make it into the Gauntlet Classic Custom. This is going to put the nose cone on the front of it to make it like the Charger Daytona from way back in the day, and it is really cool looking. Now you do get some additional customization options over the regular Bravado Gauntlet Classic, which is obviously awesome, and for the extra $815,000 you're paying for it, you absolutely should. You also do get a little step up in performance. It gets a slightly higher top speed, slightly better acceleration, and I would say the handling remains about the same. In fact, it might even get a little bit worse, to be honest, just because the car is so much longer, but it's probably a net improvement generally. Overall, it's a really cool vehicle. The customization with the Benny stuff on it is absolutely awesome. With that being said though, the regular Bravado Gauntlet Classic could also have made it onto this list because it's got a lot of customization, and arguably it looks just as good. It's just not the Daytona version of this vehicle, which by the way is actually based off of a Challenger, not a Charger, but then they went and made the Challenger into the Charger. It doesn't really make sense. It's a bit of a Rockstar moment, but it's a really cool vehicle. Definitely quite quick in a straight line. Definitely a good car to have on the drag strip. The wheelie's decent. Overall, a very good vehicle. Definitely look into the Bravado Gauntlet Classic Custom. Next up at number 6, we have a great car for having fun. This is the Bravado Gauntlet Hellfire, as I'm sure many of you are aware. Comes in at only $745,000. The cheapest vehicle on this entire list, other than the Sabre Turbo and the Bravado Gauntlet Classic Custom. The Hellfire is just a burnout machine. This is one of the most fun cars you can have for as cheap as it is. It's really good. Now it also has a lot of customization. It is obviously based off of the new Hellcat Challenger, which is pretty cool. This thing's been out for a few years now, and it's kind of gained a little bit of a following within GTA, I feel like, similar to how the Hellcats in real life have gained a bit of a following. It's really fun to drive around though. You can drift this thing really easily. It's got way too much power and it has trouble putting it down, which obviously means you're going to be able to drift. The acceleration once you actually get moving is pretty good, and it has a really high top speed as well. However, unfortunately, no matter what you do, with a spoiler option, you can put a neon kit on this thing, you can lower it, you can do as much as you possibly can. You will not be able to get this thing to go around a corner when it is under power. It is impossible. It will drift and you will not go straight. So just be aware of that. But it is a super fun car. Not the best for racing, but definitely one of the best for having fun, if not the best. At number 5, we have the Vapid Dominator GTT, coming in at $915,000. If you got the trade price. Now if you don't, it's going to be $1,220,000. Now the Dominator GTT, not to be confused with the Vapid Dominator GT, it's got an extra T in there. This is based off of the earlier Mustangs. It could be from, I'd say, 1967 to 1969, anywhere in that sort of area. This thing could be based off of, depending on the customization options that you go for. The Dominator GTT is really good. It has great handling, it has a great launch, and the acceleration is awesome too. This thing is actually one of the faster muscle cars in the game for going around a muscle car circuit race quickly. It's very good. The customization options are also awesome because it came out with the Tuners DLC all the way back in the summer of 2021. And given that it came out with the Tuners DLC, the customization options are pretty awesome. They're pretty great. It could have a little more, to be honest. Some of the bumper options are a little bit lackluster, but beyond that, it has quite a bit that you can do. Honestly, it's probably the weakest of all of the Tuners cars when it comes to customization, but still, it is an absolutely awesome car. You can make some really cool builds with it. I would heavily encourage you to pick up a Dominator GTT for sure. At number 4, we got the DeClassy Vigoro ZX, coming in at $1,960,000. A pretty fair price considering how capable this car is, and depending on the platform you play on, it gets even more capable. Now if you're on last gen, you can just buy the DeClassy Vigoro ZX and it will be a pretty good car. Top speed in the 130s, low 130s at that, I will say. It gets pretty good acceleration, decent enough launch despite being rear wheel drive only. And the handling is actually not too bad on it. It's like in between one of the really good handling muscle cars and one of the worst handling muscle cars, but overall it's very manageable. However, if you're on the new gen platforms, you can put HSW on this thing, making the top speed up to 162 miles per hour instead of in the low 130s, which is crazy. And it makes it a lot more undrivable, but also a lot more fun. You can do rolling burnouts for like ages with this thing when the HSW upgrade is on it. It's super good. Very fun to drive, very good to get across the map super quickly by taking the highways. This thing can move, man. It can move. It's crazy. And on top of it all, it's got a lot of customization. It came out with the Criminal Enterprises DLC in 2022, and that DLC was really good for customization on cars. And the Vigoro ZX is a good example of that. This thing's absolutely awesome. You really cannot go wrong with owning one, especially if you have HSW available on your platform that you play on. So check that out before you get into it, but it is still an awesome car regardless of if you have it. It just gets a lot better with HSW. Next up at number 3, we have the Vapid Dominator ASP coming in at $1,331,250 if you have the trade price, but if you don't, it's going to run you $1,775,000. The Vapid Dominator ASP is based off of the 2000 to 2004 Mustang body style. Actually, I think it might even be 98 to 2004, but 2000s ones are kind of cooler anyways. And specifically, you can make it look like the Terminator Cobra, which is absolutely awesome, but you can honestly go for a bunch of different builds with this thing. You can go for like a full-blown race build, you can go for just a regular casual street build as well. You basically choose what you want to go for with this car, and you can make it into pretty much anything you want. It's absolutely awesome. This is another Tuners DLC car, and it has way more customization than the Vapid Dominator GTT that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's so good, and the performance on this thing is absolutely insane. It is one of the fastest muscle cars in the entire game when it comes to circuit racing. It has great handling for a muscle car, and it's also got a very high top speed and great acceleration, and even a good launch as well. And a fun fact about it is because it's a tuner's car, you can put it into its stance mode when you're in free mode, and that will make the top speed way better, but it will make the handling just a little bit worse. Now, unfortunately, you can't really use this in races, but in free mode, you can use it, so you can get around the map super quickly with this thing. And it's a great looking car. Overall, you really cannot go wrong with the Vapid Dominator ASP. This thing is absolutely insane in pretty much every single way. Such a good vehicle. At number 2, we have the Bravado Buffalo EVX coming in at $2,140,000. I know, it kind of sucks that there's an EV on the muscle car list, but it has to be here because it is genuinely a very good vehicle. It's the first muscle car in GTA Online to ever be all-wheel drive, I do believe. Pretty sure that is true, which gives it a huge advantage in a class of vehicles that are exclusively rear-wheel drive, which is pretty crazy, meaning that this thing gets a very good launch off the line, and with a wheelie, it's even better. This thing's crazy good. It's got a decent amount of customization, not the most you've ever seen, but it's not the least either. It's not my favorite looking vehicle, and the performance of it definitely feels very heavy, but it does do things pretty well. It has decent handling, great launch, like I said, and the top speed is pretty good for an EV. It's like somewhere in the 120s, which is actually high for an EV. I think it's around 125, in fact. But overall, very, very cool vehicle. Now, another great fact about it is that it is an Imani Tech vehicle, meaning you can put armor plating on this thing, an oil slick proximity mine dropper as well, and of course the Imani Tech missile lock-on jammer, meaning this thing is absolutely insane for free mode, and being that it's an EV, it can take even more rockets than a gas-powered counterpart. So it can take about, I think, 12 RPGs or 12 homing missiles, which is pretty crazy. Then couple that with the missile lock-on jammer, you're basically not dying in this vehicle. It's very, very good. And for $2,140,000, you kind of can't go wrong. The only thing that is really missing is the engine sound, which does completely suck. But it is still a pretty cool car. That's it for number 2. Now for some honorable mentions, I've selected the Vapid Click to be an honorable mention for $909,000. This thing silently ran the muscle car category for a very, very long time. It was the best handling muscle car in the game for a very long time. Great acceleration, had decent top speed, but the handling was so far above anything else in the muscle category, nothing else had a chance, and no one even knew about it. It was a very rare thing that you would ever hear somebody driving a Vapid Click in the muscle category, and if they were absolutely destroying you, I guarantee it. This thing is insane, and unfortunately it has become worse over time with the addition of cars like the Vapid Dominator ASP or the Dominator GTT, for example. They both have handling that's, you know, similarly good, but with maybe better acceleration and better top speeds than the Click. But the Click dominated for a long time in silence. It was a great car. It's got some decent customization. It's very cool. I would definitely look into getting one, but I'd make sure you have some of the other cars on this list first. And then at number 2 for the honorable mentions, we have the Imponte Phoenix. This thing must be stolen off the street, so it is a little bit of a rarer vehicle. With that being said, it doesn't have a lot of customization, but it does have some stuff that you can do, and the performance is pretty good for being a vehicle that you can just take off the street and put in your garage. It's based on the old Trans Am, which is really cool. Overall, it's a great vehicle, and it's definitely something that I would look into getting, especially considering that it's free, but you do have to find one, so good luck with that. They do spawn in waves, and they're not that rare of a car, to be honest, but it might take you a while if you're looking for one. My best advice is to pretend you're not looking for one, but if you see one, make sure you take it. Awesome car. That's it for the second honorable mention. Onto the best muscle car in GTA Online. And of course, it is the Bravado Buffalo STX. You probably saw this coming in at $1,612,500 if you got the trade price, or up to $2,150,000 if you don't have the trade price. The STX is a 4-door muscle car based off the newest generation of Dodge Charger, and it's kind of arguable as to what it is. I personally think it's a Scat Pack or an RT. It's definitely not a Hellcat in my opinion, but you could argue, depending on what you like more, that it is a Hellcat because it is super fast. This thing's actually really crazy good in a straight line, top speed of around 126. It has excellent handling, some of the best handling out of the muscle car category, probably even the best handling muscle car in the entire game, arguably, with good acceleration and with a decent top speed. It's a recipe for success, and the Bravado Buffalo STX has been on top of the muscle category since it came out, all the way back in 2022 at the very start with the contract. Actually, I guess it was 2021 technically, but it's a very good car. You guys should definitely pick up an STX. And another great fact about it is that, similar to the Bravado Buffalo EVX, the STX actually has the Amani Tech stuff too. So it has armor plating that you can put on it, as well as front mounted machine guns, which is really interesting, the remote control device or the missile lock-on jammer, and then of course the oil slick proximity mine dropper. And a cool fact about it is it's a first gen Amani Tech car, so it gets those machine guns, and it also gets bullet resistant windows that can take about 15 shots from an assault rifle. So this car is insanely good in free mode, plus it's very good on the racetrack. Overall, it is just the best muscle car in GTA Online, simply put. So anyway guys, there you have it. That's been it for my top 10 best muscle cars in Grand Theft Auto Online in 2024. If you enjoyed the video, a like is of course appreciated, if not dislike. Comment down below, let me know if you'd swap out any of the cars on my list for something else. Comment a 7 if you made it to the end of the video. Subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care. Peace.